Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. Today we kick off Schlocktober with Ghostwatch, the formerly lost and forbidden BBC Halloween special from the early 90s. Please be advised, spoilers are ahead.
Hi everybody, welcome back.
Welcome.
Which today we're starting off, or kicking off really, Schlocktober with our, favorite horror films and horror-related topics.
And this is one you picked.
This is one that I picked, but everyone should be aware that this is essentially Whiskey's holy month. Like, this is when he becomes, he assumes his ultimate form. It'll all, commence on October 31st, so stay tuned.
lots of really good stuff out there right now.
That's true. I
always looked forward to AMC had I think they called it Monster Madness or something, and I would always watch plenty of horror movies that I shouldn't be watching, but they were edited for TV, so they were fine, right?
AMC edits for TV?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was really good. That's how I saw the Friday the 13th movies, Hellraiser, lots of stuff I shouldn't have been watching, but they cut out the nasty bits. Also,
if you are from Whiskey's hometown, there are unsolved crimes in your area, I would suggest looking into him.
This was an interesting pick.
This was. So, you talk about AMC, you were talking about American horror films. So, hopping across the pond, this isn't really much of a horror film as much as a horror TV. I hate saying TV movie because it has kind of a negative stigma to it. But
TV special.
TV special, let's say that.
And you told me not to look anything up about this, but as I was watching, I did remember that I had seen this talked about on one of those list videos, top 10, found footage or something like that. So I had heard of this, but it's very difficult to find. So even though I'd never seen it before. Yeah,
I know. I had to send you a link for the, it used to be considered lost media for the longest time. It's on the Internet Archive. In the Lost Media Wiki, there's articles about this. So, getting down to actually revealing the title to everybody, we're hopping across the pond to England for this TV special, Ghostwatch. It was a special that was put out on October 31st, 1992 on the BBC. The outcry that it caused led it to never really be aired again.
Okay, so that answers what... So I was wondering, because, again, I had heard of this from one of those list videos, but I didn't realize that people actually believed it was real.
Yes.
So
it's actually interesting how this all came about. First off, this is essentially what this is. It's a special kind of you'd see in the 90s and 80s, they put out specials of what is America's fascination with paranormal activity or something right now. It was kind of in the vein of those specials, the way it was formatted. It's we're going to do a live investigation at this really haunted house in England.
And that's interesting because that is very common nowadays, but there wasn't really, in 1992, there weren't all these ghost shows that you see nowadays.
Right. And in fact, the BBC, when the idea was pitched to them, they were hesitant because they didn't have anything to really compare it to. Which I'm that means, you're trailblazing here, BBC. Get behind it.
Right? Well, I mean, they did get behind it because they made it and, put it out there. It's funny from a modern perspective to look back and know that people actually were fooled by this because, and I know I'm coming from a background that's, able to spot, cinematic tomfoolery and stuff like that, but it's... There are times in the special where it feels very, very, edited. For instance, at the very beginning, there's here's the footage from the girl's bedroom, and it, at one point conveniently, zooms in to the girls. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, later in the special, it's there's a ghost hidden over there. And to a normal viewer, it might not be, noticeable, but especially nowadays when everyone is so used to being just... swimming in media. I don't even think you necessarily have to have a film background to notice that kind of thing. So by today's standards, everyone would be oh, it's fake. They zoomed in, because again, it's just funny to me that it's I bet later in the special there's going to be something off screen that we didn't see the first time, and later they're going to be oh, no one noticed this, and sure enough, that happened.
I was actually going to cover that scene. There's some interesting things that they did with the found footage genre sort of with that. Because this predates the Blair Witch Project.
Absolutely.
Post-dates UFO abduction, which we really should cover in the future.
That was on the list video, too.
Well,
I've heard of that one.
I gave you the DVD of that one that I had for you to watch. And I remember...
maybe I watched it
I remember you being
ago.
like, I was very unimpressed. Anyway...
Again, it's a different time, like, because UFO abduction was the 80s, right?
I think it was the 80s.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, just having television in your house was a luxury back then. So, it's easy for me to sit here today and be like, oh, obviously it's fake. But back then, it's like, especially, like, if you're treating it seriously, it's still the point at which, for me in this special, spoilers for, like, the end of it, but the point at which I feel like it should have been obvious this was a television special was when, like, the world is ending, like, this giant seance is happening at the end, and it's like, right. Unless you just are one of those people who's already very, like, much believing in this sort of thing, you'd be sitting at home and most likely nothing is happening in your home, and you just see, like, all of this, oh my god, we're getting tons of calls, and, like, the studios just, like, being, there's poltergeists everywhere, and there's ghosts everywhere. So, like, that's the point at which I'm surprised people didn't, like, realize that this was a Halloween special.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, I'm really going to get into a lot of the things, because this really did sort of play with the limitations of technology at the time to really sort of sell this. So
absolutely.
Ghostwatch, as I was saying, was set up as this, kind of this kind of fun sort of, it wasn't really fun, but more of informational documentary. It wasn't really a documentary because it was supposed to be happening live, but it's a very informational program just about the paranormal and, in this case, Britain's fascination with it. They had the main host. He was speaking with a paranormal expert, and they were going to have a live investigation at this super haunted house, which, if any of you have seen the miniseries The Enfield Haunting or have known about the Enfield Poltergeist, it really is sort of kind of takes a lot of cues from that ghost story out of England. Or if you've seen the second Conjuring, that's what that story is based on. And in that case, that was sort of a case where, depending on who you talk to, it was either real or entirely fabricated. But so essentially they're doing this, and the spirits at the house in the investigation they're doing sort of take over things, and it becomes a very, very dark and unsettling ending, which can be, as we saw, as we'll get into, very unsettling for many viewers. There is some point like today that we're just like, oh my god, this is clearly fake. There's several reasons why that even though that was happening, people thought it was real, and I want to get right into that. Okay, so the show was starring Michael Parkinson. He was would be the MC in this program.
Okay.
He was essentially, basically, from what I've read, so I'm not British, but he was kind of like Walter Cronkite in Britain, or Barbara Walters, a very well-respected, not somebody who was known to put on a fictional show. So we already had that. It's like, for example, people wanted to hear the news from Walter Cronkite here in the U.S. because, he was known to be the voice of truth and of honesty and integrity. So he kind of already carried that sort of weight with him. And again, this is presented as a news program, which you would be common to see him in. And then we had Sarah Green also playing herself. She was a children's host for a children's TV program on the BBC. And then we had another, Craig, I believe his name is Craig Charles. He was a stand-up comedian, and he was on a sitcom at the time. I'm trying to think, I think it was called Red Dwarf, I think is what it was called.
Oh!
Yeah, he was in that.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So he was not, so, he was kind of brought in to sort of, bring some, lightheartedness to it.
And who was he?
He was the at the haunted house, he was the outside reporter who would just interview people who were outside the house.
Oh, he was like the dude pranking people.
Yeah, he was the one pranking people.
Okay, makes sense.
And then we also had Sarah Green's husband, I believe it was Michael Smith or just Mike Smith.
But so, like, all these people were, like, so they were really married.
They were really married
so
in real life.
So they were playing themselves.
They were still playing themselves. So everybody basically played themselves.
Okay, that makes me makes me able to understand the hype a little bit more.
The way the script was originally written was the character of Mike Smith's role, and it wasn't included, but when Sarah Green came on board, he also read the script and loved it, and they wrote him in, and that really sort of just adds a whole new level of, I don't want to say drama, but it ups the, I forget what's the word I'm looking for, the tensity That's not
yeah. Oh, of course. Now I'm
people would say it ups the ante.
Ups the ante. The tension.
Suspense. And it kind of ups that, especially when you see how he starts behaving when Sarah's character might be in danger. So they have this whole investigation, and you get to a point about 3/4 of the way through the program where it's basically like, oh, this was clearly a hoax or whatever. And
there's like other things I notice. Well, and again, this is like from
I mean within the program they kind within the program they like, okay, this is a hoax, and even Michael Parkinson starts to grill the sort of the paranormal expert and be like, okay, you can't really deny we just saw this basically just
faking it, just making
noises. So there's that. So it's kind of like, okay, this is, and then things sort of just immediately pick up again. And
there's some good setup and payoff with that though, because earlier in if you're coming at this knowing that it's a TV special, that there's some kind of good writing, but also such good writing that you can kind of tell this might be fake. They set up earlier on that whatever this spirit is can like make itself look like other characters, because there's the whole bit about the mother tucking the girl in and just staring at her. And then the mother's like, I was downstairs the whole time. So, like, if you know that this is fake, then, great setup and payoff. Because obviously the little girl making noises isn't actually, the real little girl's still in bed. And whatever that little girl is.
Right.
But also, it's very convenient. Even in, like, more modern, like, real, quote-unquote, like, ghost video or ghost shows and stuff, things don't get wrapped up so neatly. The other thing, as far as this feeling kind of more like a scripted program, again, like I have the benefit of it being like 20, 30 years in the future and more modern technology, but some of the acting from some of the actors, the TV people are pretty good, but like the haunted family, there's some monologuing from the mom that to me felt very acted.
I will say that there were a couple good, and I think they did a phenomenal performance of some of the people they interview outside. I will say, I will agree with you. The family, just there was that one scene where I think Craig Charles is interviewing these people who, like, I guess live in the neighborhood, and they're like, oh, there's some stuff going on, and then this is TV special. You're just expecting to hear like, oh, we've heard screaming from the house. That's not what it is. Oh yeah, there's dogs that showed up dead, and then their guts are just spread across the ground, and I was just like, that got dark.
Yeah.
That was just some brutal honesty right there. And I do think moments like that are what kind of help sell it as real.
And also, as far as hammy acting goes, I gotta give it out to the skeptic guy.
Oh, he was so obnoxious.
Well,
he
was
also,
like,
he was the most unlikable person ever.
Which, again, kind of goes into it feeling written, because no one is that rude in real life. Maybe some people are, but again, like
Ben Shapiro.
The whole back and forth between him and the parapsychologist or whatever is so like, oh, of course they know each other, and of course, again, it feels kind of convenient. So like looking at it, it's sort of like, really, like you have these two people who've like butted heads in the past, and they both happen to be on this program. Yeah, the guy's super condescending.
In defense of the program, if I was looking to up some TV drama, I would put people who have butted heads in the past up together.
I'm not saying that it is bad writing. I'm saying that it comes off as fake.
Okay.
Because in real life, and this is something you see like in like good mockumentaries and stuff, like a lot of it is like relying on improv. Because if you write something for someone to say, even if it's like well done, it's not going to come off as off the cuff. It's going to come off as like someone wrote that. Like when you watch like real documentaries or real interviews with people, they're very sloppy. Like they can't articulate themselves very well, and it just feels more like natural. So like that's one thing that, and maybe there was some improv to this show, but again, it's not bad writing. But again, this kind of just goes into me being surprised no one could pick up that this was fake, because to me it feels very written.
I do feel like you said today, it's very obvious to be like, oh yeah, this is clearly staged, this is clearly not real.
But you'd be surprised that I did like it.
I know, I was. I literally thought Whiskey was going to come and be like, hey, this is the most garbage thing I've ever seen. What did you make me watch? Because I showed up UFO Abduction, and that's a very near and dear piece to my heart. And he was like,
well,
really?
The fact that I don't remember it super well is probably part of the problem. Like, this had good production values from being on the BBC and, like, all the special
Oh,
effects.
it was the BBC.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, that's the thing. Like, the production value is better. Like, even if I don't believe that it's real, like, the climax especially, it was, like, very fun to watch. UFO abduction, I don't remember it, but I'm guessing it probably just had, like, a couple of scenes. Oh, okay, I remember that. That's the one with the family, right? And
yeah, so
it's based on that story of, like, the green men that, like, attacked that house or something like that.
I think
there's some famous UFO story about, like, a bunch of aliens like attacking this small cabin in, like, rural Georgia or something like that.
I think this actually might have spawned that story.
Possibly, but anyway,
but I mean,
I remember that one.
That's beside the point. But you know, with this, so you know, with this one, eventually ends with chaos. So we have the children's host who's drug into this closet under the stairs and is presumed killed. We have her husband who gives a very convincing performance of freaking out over this prospect. This is where, at least, you know, today a lot of us are just like, really, with Michael Parkinson becoming possessed, and like I said, with him being such a serious news person who hasn't really done something like this.
Well, what I thought was clever about the ending was the idea that the television program basically was a seance.
Yes.
And that was where the chaos came in, because it was like, since millions of people were tuning in, it created this super seance that, like, you know, and people in their homes are being possessed and poltergeist activity and stuff, and in the studio you see stuff getting knocked over and all this.
Yeah.
And again, this is where I would be surprised that people aren't like, oh, this is fake.
Yeah.
Because this isn't happening in my house right now. But whatever, it was a different time. It was a simpler time.
It was a different time. And
but I thought that was cool. And
I love the
and you'll be
ending of it,
surprised to hear this, but I think they should remake this, because today you could do so much with that ending. Like, imagine if they did this as a special, and either they did something with smart TVs, or you could download an app. And then at the end of the program, like, your phone goes nuts or something like that. Because this is a cool idea, and it's a shame that they've kind of buried it, because I think that there's a lot of potential, even though now everyone tuning in would know, oh, this is fake.
Right.
Because Ghostwatch was such an infamous incident.
So let's look a little bit into the background of this. So this was originally pitched by Stephen Volk. He wrote and I believe directed this. He went on to work on a lot of other, you know, sort of paranormal themed programs in the UK. But he originally conceived this as a 6-part series where they, you know, would sort of do a documentary about this supposed haunting in this neighborhood in, like, the UK. And then, you know, it would culminate with a live investigation. And then it would sort of all kind of like, it would proceed as we saw. The BBC was very nervous about this because, again, they didn't really have anything to base this on. Something like this had never really been done before.
Yes.
And so they're like, okay, what if we just do one episode? A one-time special for Halloween. And so they were like, sure, we'll do basically what we want to do for the last thing. We'll try to combine as much as we can in there to make this work. So that's what they ended up doing. They did market this as a...
right?
No, they marketed it as a drama. It was marketed as a movie. In paper, but again, this is before internet, so basically in, like, I don't know if they have TV Guide in Britain or if they had something else. Whatever their channel listings were, would list this as, you know, a drama.
They had Teleguide.
They had Teleguide. They had, what is it called? BBC One. The BBC One logo aired before the start of this, which you don't know. I didn't know this, but that's apparently what airs before the start of every scripted program at the time. I don't know if that's still the case.
Oh wow, that really should have been a warning sign.
But
not everyone caught it at the beginning.
And it had a quick opening credits, and it's like if you missed the opening, there was nothing in the middle, because if I remember correctly, there weren't commercials in this program. It was just aired. It just aired straight through, and so, you know, if you missed that opening, you know, you would know this was real. Now they did have a fail-safe that failed. Their fail-safe was, you know, and if you watch this, like, call this number, tell your ghost story. We'd love to hear about your ghost stories or whatever. And, you know, that comes into play in the program, too, with people calling and claiming they've seen things on the program. But with people calling in, sharing their ghost stories, you would hear a recording of it saying, you know, just a reminder, this is not real, but share your story with us anyway. Well, you know, so many people were watching, and I don't know if they were panicked yet towards the beginning or not, but so many people were calling, at least reporting their stories, that most of them didn't get through and didn't hear the message. So that failed. And then if you didn't get the message on the call through and you missed the opening, the only other way you would find out wasn't until the very end of it when the credits rolled. And even if, I think on the recording I showed you, they even have an announcer come on saying, if you're just joining us, just a reminder, this was totally fictional. They came, which I don't believe, I think I read, that wasn't actually originally part of the program. They came on live and did that during the closing credits. This is not real. This is not a thing. So yes, people became very panicked as they were watching this because, like I said, it's like watching Walter Cronkite come on TV and say, just so you know, America, ghosts are real. It's like, there was a time when we didn't have such mistrust in the news that this would be something that would question. The news would come on, a respected person come on, and they would essentially do this program, and you would accept that as fact.
Well, and you bring up the Blair Witch, and it's kind of the same thing where that I actually do like the movie. A lot of people say it doesn't hold up. I still enjoy it. It's not one of my all-time favorites.
I remember the first time I watched the Blair Witch Project, which was about a couple years ago. That was my first time seeing it. I'd never seen it as a kid. I remember everybody talking about it and how scary and horrifying it was. And I watched it and I was kind of just like, this is it.
I like it a lot, but it's not the movie, it's the viral marketing. Because if you don't already know, what happened is, like, they said that it was real found footage. They went on Discovery Channel and did a documentary about the 3 missing college students and the Blair Witch, and presented it as evidence on, the Discovery Channel. It's like in the bonus features of the DVD, so you can see, like, they're presenting it as truth. Then the website, which was the big thing, the internet was brand new. People were starting to, surf the web. And they had all these, like, clues and crazy, like, things that you could interact with on the website. So it was presented with such, it felt so real that even though, it's the whole idea of, like, these kids disappearing in the woods and being killed by these kids going disappearing.
Well,
it's ridiculous, but it's done in such a way. And that was the other thing, too. The actors were like, they had to sign a super NDA, so like they had to not appear in anything else.
And it was it was a year or 2 years.
Couple years.
God. I'd be like, I better be getting a stipend then.
Yeah,
I can't essentially work
that's
for 2
like
years.
the thing about the Blair Witch is, like, I still think the movie's, like, fun. Yeah, not a lot happens in it, but again,
I didn't mean it was bad. I just mean, like, it had been hyped up so much that when I finally saw it,
well, and it goes
like,
into what I was talking about when it's like you're writing something to feel real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if crazy stuff was happening in the Blair Witch Project throughout the whole runtime, then you'd be like, this is fake.
Yeah.
Like, if stuff's like hovering and eventually you'd realize, like, this is way too convenient.
I think what really sells Blair Witch is a lot of it's what you can't see.
And a lot of it was improv, too.
Exactly.
Which is, again, what I said, like, when you write something to be, like,
there are ethics issues I have with that movie. For example, them withholding food on purpose. I was like,
oh yeah, they messed with the actors.
Okay. Anyway, but getting back to Ghostwatch, but again, that was an example of something that was marketed as real.
Yes,
so real, and I think the reason why people didn't.
Well, you said it was marketed as a drama.
This was marketed as a drama, but I guess people just didn't pay attention.
Again, it's. I don't want to assume people.
What I think would happen
is certain way, but
I think a lot of this was people just, like, tuned in. Oh, let's see what's on the BBC tonight, and they kind of just. I don't think this is a program people really in particular sought out, but it was something that it was just, okay, there's nothing else really on. Oh, look, there's an interesting special on the BBC. Let's just watch this. So basically, you and I know this from going to film school. A lot, they still talk about, supposedly, what is it called, with War of the Worlds.
Orson Welles?
Yeah, Orson. It's basically come out that essentially there were a couple people who believed it wasn't this mass panic that
most people know that nowadays. Yeah. Like, even in school, they tell you, like, it was not as big as, like, people make it out to be. But it's all about, like, it was like the radio trying to, like, oh, hey, how amazing are we that we produced this thing that people thought were real? It was more like marketing for the radio station than it was truthfully reporting that, like, people believed aliens.
So the difference between this and that one is this was really a mass panic sort of situation.
Oh yeah. It's like the opposite, honestly, because in Orson Welles' situation, they're trying to down or upplay it.
They were trying to upplay to kind of really build.
Like, no,
they were trying to build the mythology of this program. This one, they were trying to downplay it for damage control purposes. So
they pretty much buried it too, right?
They did. They had.
Did they ever release it, or?
They ended up where it was basically you couldn't talk. They didn't talk about it for like 10 years, and once the internet happened and the Lost Media Wiki came about and people started talking about the stuff online, then they're like, okay, I guess people have forgiven us. They still haven't re-aired it, but they I think released it on a DVD. But I think you can only get it like in the UK. So I owe a lot of my research credit to the YouTuber Inside a Mind. He did a fantabulous documentary sort of about this. So a lot of the information that I know about this I got from him because he was very 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 thorough in it. But I was reading some interviews, and he did some interviews too with Stephen Volk. And one of the things that they talk about is Stephen Volk remembers. They got calls in. There were people who were upset that this was that they had been basically fooled. They'd lost their trust in the BBC. But I mean, for us now that's laughable because it's like people say they fake news all the time. Back then, sure. that was a huge deal for you to not believe in the BBC. Even by U.S. standards, the BBC it's held to a much higher standard.
It's a cool idea too, but I kind of get where maybe this wasn't a smart idea to put it on the news because BBC One is the news. Right, like that's why.
BBC One is there. BBC is just like a channel, like ABC or something.
Well, they have BBC 1, 2, 4, I believe, is where they have a lot of their good dramatic shows and stuff like that.
I think back then may have been one channel. I don't know. I know BBC.
It's pretty iconic.
I know.
So maybe I'm wrong, but
BBC One, at least at the time, was their studio for scripted dramas or scripted shows.
Again, it's like the more I'm hearing about this, the more I'm really shaking my head, thinking you guys should have known. It was marketed as a drama. It was listed as a drama. It was on the dramatic channel. There was credits. I don't think
it was on the dramatic channel. I think
you just said it was.
No, it was produced by BBC One. BBC One.
So it wasn't on BBC One then.
Right. I don't know if BBC One was a channel yet.
It's always been as
whatever. It was okay. Anytime they just talk about it being on BBC, so I'm just gonna assume it's on the classic BBC.
Well, the BBC, from what I understand, it's kind of like networks here. You had
we have
NBC,
FX, we have FX,
ABC.
FXX,
No,
FXX.
No. Because you know your television history. You had ABC, you had NBC, you had CBS, and Fox came out later. Yeah, it was the 70s, but there were 4 networks. They even made the movie network about the whole thing. So BBC was kind of the same. They had only 4 major networks, but they were all BBC. So that's where you had BBC 1 and 2 and all that sort of. So it's the same as the US, but different.
We are now learning my lack of knowledge of the way the BBC works.
So that's. Again, I don't know because I've never lived. I've visited, but I've never lived in the UK. So I don't. When I hear the numbers over there, it's kind of iconic. BBC, this channel has always been this. So I don't know if it was on the scripted or the unscripted BBC channel.
The way people talk about react to it is, I'm guessing it would aired on, I guess, whatever one that the news would air on.
Okay, that was a bad idea.
But in their defense, they did have the BBC One studio logo before, which I guess, but the way people, I guess, maybe airing a movie or a special or something like this wasn't uncommon to air on the news channel, because nobody really talks about they shouldn't have aired it on the BBC News channel. They should have aired it on the BBC. No, I haven't really heard that argument. So maybe that really was, maybe they would occasionally air fictional programming on there, maybe to fill time or whatever. So you'll appreciate this. There was actually a woman who called in and wanted compensation because her husband soiled himself during the program. She wanted compensation for a new pair of trousers.
Pooping yourself's never not funny.
And then they asked,
leave a comment if you pooed yourself.
just in general. Or, listening to this program. And then they also had religious figures call on that says that, they knew it was fake, but it was irresponsible to, air this sort of program because it can create activity that occurred. There are actually people that did call in and claim that it stirred up paranormal activity.
Conjured a demon.
In their own home, which I have my own stories about that. So I'm not gonna fully discount that as a possibility. My deal with that.
Yes. The Conjuring.
The Conjuring movie. The Conjuring movie that conjured things up. So, regardless of what you believe, that's the whole thing. So people really did take this seriously, is the point. And, there is some very, very sad part of this. There was actually a young man who committed suicide because of what he watched in the program. Specifically, what they mentioned is in the program, they had a ghost that would make noises, and the mother just like, oh, it's the heating pipes, it's the pipes in the wall. And so because of that, the little girl started calling the poltergeist or whatever, the ghost, pipes. And so I guess he was having, similar sounds in his own home from the heating pipes or whatever. So he assumed it was the same thing, so he ended up committing suicide, and that's really sad.
It's sad, but it's kind of extreme for.
It is an extreme action,
the
but
man needed some psychological help.
There is a footnote there.
That is sad. I just don't think the BBC is responsible for that.
The footnote here is he was, a person who was, I believe, mentally challenged. So he had some difficulties kind of grasping certain topic. I believe they said that he had the schooling level. Well, he was like his mind operated like that of I believe a 14-year-old or something. But he did live on his own. He was an adult. So there were some other issues there, but that's still
very sad.
That's still sad that it happened.
But I would argue that something else could have made him honestly. I just think it's a tragedy he wasn't getting the right help that he needed from something.
So we have all this going on. The BBC's freaking out because of all this backlash and everybody's literally every paper in the UK was running stories being like, how could the BBC do this? The BBC betrays its viewers.
Do you know what's ironic is, Orson Welles started his career in the UK and came to America. Well, he learned everything he knew from them.
He started his career in the UK, and then he started in the US by essentially betraying people, but here we are.
Well, he lied, and so he went to the UK, said he was a famous actor, got into theater, then he came back saying he was a famous actor from the UK and got into radio. I just think it's funny, he went on to have, this big hoax, but he learned his trade from the UK, so it's they're the king of the hoaxes.
So we have all this going on, and then also I guess so BBC just basically started this policy. I believe they issued an apology. They just started pretending like this program never even existed. They wouldn't mention it. They wouldn't talk about it. Nothing was ever said about it. They actually went as far as to, I believe, one of the radio stations they own and said that, you were not allowed to mention this program ever again on one of their own radio stations. First off, I have an issue with that because I'm like, that's, regardless of your reasons, that's a form of censorship. But that's, again, sidebar. I believe it was up for a BAFTA that year. And the BBC used its influence to make sure that it was dropped from the category and not mentioned. Which I'm like, the fact that this was recognized by the BAFTA, that says something about it. Regardless of the outcry it caused.
It was well produced. That was the other thing I forgot to mention that I thought was actually kind of ahead of its time. The editing during the chaos at the end, where you're seeing the TV cameras glitching out, and there's a lot of weird audio kind of stuff. All of that, you'd see that nowadays if there was a found footage movie. Again, this was in 1992, so actually that whole end sequence where it keeps cutting to inside the house and you see all this weird stuff going on with the cameras, that was actually really good. So production-wise, I think this is great, and even writing-wise, I think it's really great. It just really surprises me that people. Well,
it's interesting, and a lot of kids tune into this. If this wasn't promoted, people will be like, oh, Sarah promoted it on her channel. They've gone back and reviewed the tape. She didn't promote it on her channel or on her kid's show or anything. But, people will be flipping the channels like, oh, it's Sarah Green. It must be okay, for kids to watch.
What was her kid's show called?
I have no idea. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm not saying you're not relevant. I'm just saying I don't know. I didn't look that far.
You did your research now.
Well, she actually came back. It would traumatize a whole bunch of kids. Because they essentially, that's like for us, being 5 and watching Big Bird be murdered.
Barney the dinosaur get possessed.
On TV. And so she actually had to come on her kids' show the following weekend and be like, no, it's okay, I'm alive, everything's fine, that was pretend. A couple years after this, they did a psychological study. And this is the first program that actually can be clinically and scientifically linked to developing cases of PTSD in children or in viewers. People were legitimately traumatized by this program. This was this was a
oh boy, those kids wouldn't be ready for what's on TV nowadays. Again, not that it's bad, but it's pretty tame compared to even American Horror Story or something like that.
Well, but then American Horror Story, has never been. It's never been in a position to where people could argue that this is actually happening or this is dramatized.
True, but the Paranormal Activity movies are on TV all the time as well.
That's true, but they are never said to be true on TV, and also you don't have respect.
No, but in the movie, they have the title card that says that this actually happened.
Yeah, I know. It's because they're stupid.
No, but my point is, a young, impressionable kid could stumble upon paranormal activity
that's true.
if they don't have parental controls, see the thing, and then be like, oh my, Mommy, did you see this woman's possessed?
Well, I'm actually going to get right into this. And so, like you said, nowadays we have stuff like Paranormal Activity and American Horror, all this stuff airing on TV that doesn't cause the same amount of panic. And I believe it's really because this program was able to play with the limitations of technology at the time.
I also think that it was kind of a family program, or intended to be something to watch. At least when I was watching it, it seemed like something that older and younger people could appreciate, because it never crossed that line of being like super morbid. Like, they'll talk about dogs being disemboweled or whatever, but they don't show it.
They don't show.
So that probably, again, like I use American Horror Story as an example, but little kids are probably not watching American Horror Story.
It may have been originally conceived at that, but I do think it is important to note they never advertise it as fun for the whole family.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean. Like American Horror Story is an R-rated show. Yeah. I mean, even Paranormal Activity was rated R. Maybe it was PG-13. I feel like it was R, but
I
anyway.
think it was R.
Anyway,
most bad horror films are R.
I don't know. Even kind of scary movies that are intended for slightly younger people, like we had Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Oh, that movie.
That I feel like just the monster design and stuff like that is a lot scarier than anything in this program. So again, no shade to any of the kids that got PTSD from this. It's just interesting because by today's standards, everything on there is not that scary.
Well, right, and even if something like you're talking about, if a kid turns on Paranormal Activity, sees just the title cards and stuff that's happening, he can at least turn to an adult or the internet and just check, did Paranormal Activity actually happen? And you'll see a bunch of questions.
Dad will just be like, no, it's not, it's stupid.
And or on Yahoo Answers, there's a bunch of just young children asking the same thing.
I don't know, there's probably a bunch of Yahoo Answers saying it is real.
There probably is, but you can look into it, you can find out this is all, that's something you could do at the time. You basically had print media and, ironically, the news to tell you what was true and not true.
And again, with the Blair Witch Project, that was kind of the ironically funny sort of, because if you tried to look into the Blair Witch Project, all the viral marketing was telling you that it was true.
Right.
It didn't, until like years later, they never came out and said, oh, it's all fake.
Yeah.
It took a while before that became like a normal...
Well, I think there was a point at which it became so saturated that people kind of just accepted that it was a movie.
I think some people...
Even before they even said...
I think it was pretty much like a year people thought it was real. But, I would guess, I think. Because by that time, you start getting the copycats and everything like that. They didn't come out and say it was fake until a while later. But I do think for at least a year, again, with the Blair Witch Project, they had a Discovery Channel documentary about the lives of these fake characters.
Right.
With their family coming on and crying and saying, like, come home. So it's just funny because even in the early internet age, if you, like, Googled Blair Witch Project, it would just take you to the website.
Just thinking about that, I appreciate it from a marketing standpoint. In fact, it's still studied. But from a moral standpoint, I kind of have an issue with it. But getting back to Ghostwatch, so one of the things that this program really kind of played upon was the idea that you couldn't go back and rewatch things, except for, again, unless you were lucky enough to have a VCR. For those of you that don't know, and I actually heard this joke from the YouTuber Telltale the other day, VCR was like pre-DVD. If you don't know what pre-DVD was, that was pre-DVR. If you don't know what that was, it was
You're too young, get off our channel.
Well, he actually went and said it's like pre-Netflix. So, you couldn't go back and rewatch it, and you and I had the benefit to do that. So the scene you were talking about where they review the footage, and they're like, oh, there's something there. If you watch that, they play it back and watch it they show it once in live the first time.
So the first time they show
it, there is nothing there. There is nothing there.
Because they zoom in on the girls.
Well, even before they zoom in, there's nothing there. The second time they show it...
but the second... So, I know what you're talking about. So the first time they show it, there's nothing there. They zoom in on the girls, and it's just, for the rest of the footage, it's zoomed in on the girls. So that, to me, alerted me to, like, okay, there's something in the corner, or whatever. And when they review the footage, it's all from the wide, like it would be if it was...
Like, even the fact that it started, they did zoom in so you couldn't really focus on it, but again, that's to what do they use? Magic is all about misdirection. And it's, you know, it's the same sort of thing, you know, to guide you away from that. And then when they reviewed it the second time, like I said, they showed it all wide. They actually had, you know, superimposed. It's faint, so it's not super obvious.
Exactly.
But it's obvious, but it's not like ridiculously obvious.
The only reason to me my BS detectors were going off was
the zooming.
Just the zoom. Like if you were trying to show like real footage of something, you wouldn't touch it.
Right.
Because again, like if you're watching and being skeptical, you can tell if they edit it or something. Yeah. So again, that to me, I was like, okay, this would be scripted. But anyway.
So then they're like, wait, you know, hold on. And then they play it back immediately again, and the thing's not there. So already they start to play with the idea of that you can't trust your eyes. Did I see something? Did I not see something? That's a very, very big part of this program. They do it again when they play back, you know, they were like, oh, you know, here's an example, like I believe it's an example of what like an EVP sounds like. And they play back, if you look in the backgrounds, there is, you know, the same creature that we see in that shot we were just talking about standing behind the paranormal. But again, it's not obvious. It's if you're looking for it. It's just there enough to where you'll be like, wait, did I see something? But again, you can't back up and you can't rewatch. You can't do all this. Like I said, unless you have a VCR, but if you're going to do that, that means you stop recording and then it's a whole thing. So, you know, they play with that a lot.
If anyone did record this on their VCR, they would have made a lot of money.
Yes.
Selling the heck out of it.
Selling is just black marketing.
Oh, the BBC doesn't want to sell it? Well, I guess I'd better make copies.
So, you know, they really did that. They played a lot with our perception of the idea that we do sort of, as a society, blindly trust, you know, whether or not it's earned or not.
Absolutely. It sounds like a mixed bag. Honestly, like having the news people there, if you were just tuning in, you would think like, oh, it's a special report or something.
Yeah.
The only reason I find it kind of funny is, again, it seemed like before they aired this, they tried to cover their tracks as far as like, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. Then as soon as the actual program begun, they didn't really do anything.
They didn't do anything more because like it was essentially a movie.
Yeah.
Was what it was. For better or for worse, I think it was good, at least for a period of time.
I think this is great.
I think it did do a service for good. Is it really made us stop and really think about the sources that we have, that we stop and question. I believe a whole generation of people in the UK now are
skeptical.
They're more skeptical, whether or not that's paranoid skeptical or just skeptical. Like, let me just double check this source really quick. And I do think it did it, but
morally, I feel like it's a gray area because there's like some irresponsible things, some things where they did try and cover themselves. Just as a TV special, I talk about horror a lot, but the other thing I really champion as much as I can on this channel is originality. And there's nothing more comforting than a nice like monster movie marathon on Halloween, but I do really like when television networks try and do something original for Halloween. Yeah. So I think this would be a cool remake.
Essentially, you know, what this all boils down to is this was a program that was, I would say, ahead of its time. And I think the fact that it was ahead of its time is why it was able to critique its time as far as the way it interpreted, as the way we as society interpret what we see on TV. I mean, this was still back in time where, you know, now we have to tell people just because it's on the internet, it's not true. This is when people had to start saying, just because it's on TV doesn't mean it's true. Like, even I remember watching the old Garfield cartoons from the 80s. They made jokes about this. They had a game show on there where they would talk about ridiculous stuff, and they would always be like, "Now remember, if they said it on TV, it must be true."
I think it was ahead of its time. Just when you see how many ghost shows there are nowadays, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures. You've got The Haunting Show, which you and I both like.
Yeah.
Sorry, A Haunting. But
A Haunting. The Haunted is an Animal Planet show.
Which, it's fine, but that's a whole other thing. But anyway, but yeah, no, like, it kind of, not predicted, but maybe predicted. It started this whole, like, ghost television show thing, and I think, again, BBC, you cowards, remake this. You can make this a lot cooler nowadays.
Yeah, do it with the Norton Graham show as the back as the backdrop.
Graham Norton as the host would be great.
And then just have the celebrity panel that's normally on there all become possessed and like eat each other.
You'd have the benefit of everyone knowing that it's fake now, and with today's technology, not just with the production, like with the ghosts and everything, but also just with, again, you could have an app that makes people's phones go crazy or something near the end when the seance stuff is happening.
Right. And
you could get there's tons of really good like British actors on the BBC. You could do the same thing where it's like, oh, this woman from Orphan Black is going to investigate, I don't know what. Do it, BBC. Yeah. Stop being so cowardly. Embrace this. Make it a yearly thing. I'm sure it would get crazy good ratings, and it would be a lot of fun.
Have Benedict Cumberbatch be dragged into the glory hole. Just so you guys know, apparently that's what those closets that Harry Potter lived in are called.
I certainly learned something.
Which, if you watch the show, they're just throwing it around, not in a non-hilarious manner.
She gets drugged into the glory hole.
It's a whole thing. Anyway, so, did some good to come out of this. There was actually a lot of people who got into film and TV because of this. They remember being terrified of this as a kid.
Well, this has a cult following. It does. It wouldn't be on those list videos. It would. Hopefully, some of you out there know about this.
Well, and I'm actually disappointed that in our history of TV class this wasn't discussed, and because to me this is kind of a big moment, at least in broadcast, maybe not for the U.S., which I'm guessing is why it wasn't discussed, but it still was kind of a big thing.
Possibly, we did cover the Prisoner, which was a cool show.
And Stephen Volk said, he's heard from people in universities say that, every year, even before this became not the dirty word anymore that it is anymore in the BBC, but they can mention it now. Even before then, there was always some kid that wanted to do his dissertation on Ghostwatch, who was in like broadcast studies or something like that. And, and a lot of people wanted to get into this field because they were fascinated by what they saw. And there were other people, who got into studying, paranormal, beliefs and ideas or even activity just because they were fascinated by what scared them as a kid. So I will say, the BBC, I will give them credit for, at least, even though it was something that they were nervous about airing, they still did go through and air it. They are sort of risk takers. If you really look at their history of the stuff they've aired, I mean, how soon are we all going to forget the classic sitcom Heil, Honey, I'm Home that aired for... You've not heard of this?
I've heard of it. I just...
I mean...
It's one of those things you forget about until you...
That was a show that was canceled in the middle of its first episode airing.
Oh, man.
But, I will say, I will at least, give them, some kudos for taking some risk and actually airing the program, even though they backtracked immediately. And at least it didn't scare them from creating other content.
The BBC's great. Honestly, I feel like the quality has always been a little possibly better than the US, but this was cool.
Except the only British program that people have actually said is not better is people who were in the British office have said that the US office is better.
Oh, them's fighting words. For sure, trust me.
And I am speaking to somebody who's seen neither. I'm just saying I know what I have read people say about the two programs.
The British, so it's Ricky Gervais. If you know who he is, it's the British office is a lot raunchier than the American one. The American one's a lot more like happy feelings kind of show.
Well, I feel like the office, the American office is more, like it kind of plays more into like slapsticky sort of humor.
As I said, it's a lot toned down.
It's a different type of comedy.
Yes.
It's a similar premise, but it's a different type of comedy.
Same format, different jokes.
Got it.
I'll say it that way. There's a couple of similarities, like there is the Office Jim character who is pranking the Dwight, so they did lift that. It's the whole thing. But yeah, no, so... I would like to see this become a yearly thing on the BBC. Let us know if you agree.
The legend lives on.
And yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. So would you recommend this?
Hell yeah.
For those of you who want to watch, it is available. If you're not in the UK and you can't buy the DVD, it is available on the Internet Archive.
Release it on Blu-ray.
Release it on Blu-ray. Give us that 4K experience.
Do it.
So recommend from me, recommend from him. Thank you for joining us. I want to leave you with Stephen Volk's a quote from Stephen Volk sort of about this. Documentaries are simply telling a story, and facts are a bonus.
If you like this video,
Hit that notification bell.
Hit that like button if you want to hear more from us. Subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Tweet at us. Give us your suggestions.
Otherwise, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
We'll catch you in the next one for more Schlocktober.
Stay thirsty.
Yes.
Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited by Pat Mars and produced by Alejandro Castillo, with original artwork by Asa Sparza. Follow us on Twitter at Reels on the Rocks and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.